person. Thank you, Hila.
Okay, the recording started, Driest, so if you want to start.
Thank you. And then Sophia has just added something in the chat. Before we officially start the event at midday, were there any questions on the format or anything else, or anything that you wanted me to highlight?
No.
Okay, fantastic. Super. Thank you. I'm just going to give it 30 seconds before we start. Hello and welcome to the Atacama ASC Partnership webinar. I'm really delighted that so many of you can join us this lunchtime on a Friday. The sun is shining in London, so I'm hoping that you've got good weather wherever you are in the UK or elsewhere. So today we are sharing with our supporters a little bit more about an exciting new partnership between Action for Stammering Children and the Atacama Expedition team. As some of you might know already, the purpose of this partnership is to raise £120,000 to continue to fund our life-changing residential stammering courses for teenagers. Now, before I introduce the speakers, I wanted to share a bit of background about the work that this partnership will support and the work that we do at Action for Stammering Children, much of which you will know already because you already work with us. But for those of you who might not be so familiar with our stammering courses, this is just a little bit of context and laying the groundwork before we get into the conversation with our partners. So, at Action for Stammering Children, we work with children and young people who stammer, and we work to provide the support, the respect, and the confidence to live the life that they wish to lead. And many of you know that we achieve this through our 3 action areas, the first being providing that crucial information, community, and support to young people and their families and the professionals who support them. And the second area being championing research to optimise those outcomes for young people and to build that evidence base. And the third being to change policies and societal attitudes to create a more inclusive, supportive society, but also to make sure that public policy is reflecting the needs of young people across the UK. And one of the projects that we offer to teenagers is our 6-month stammering course. It's a programme that involves a 1-week residential in North Yorkshire, and that is then followed up with a follow-up day at 3 months and 6 months. And it's delivered by our partners, specialist speech and language therapists, Ben and Teresa. And I think what's really special about this programme is it's an initiative that wouldn't be provided by the NHS. It incorporates speech and language therapy, outdoor activities and team building to develop confidence, build resilience, promote acceptance, and also facilitate a peer support network amongst teenagers who stammer living all over the country. In addition to the direct benefits to teenagers, parents access daily online therapy groups. And in those therapy groups, they work with Ben and Teresa to really develop their understanding of what their children are doing on the course, and to help them to support their child when they return home and embed those positive changes that they've accomplished on the course and make sure they're embedded. A further benefit, and another reason that we fund these courses, is actually it provides an opportunity for student speech and language therapists to help out on the course. So they attend the course in addition to Ben and Teresa, and it's a fantastic opportunity pre-registration to develop their skills and hopefully encourage those newly qualified speech and language therapists to pursue a specialism in stammering. So through these courses, dozens of teenagers every year develop the confidence to communicate, but also the confidence to bring stammering awareness back to their local community. And I wanted to just share a few things that teenagers who've participated on the course have shared once they finished their 1 week residential. One young person said, "It allowed me to realise I was not the only one who stammers. I can put the thought to rest that I'm not alone in stammering." Another young person said, "I don't think I'm as sensitive to stammering, and I don't feel alone with my stammer anymore." Someone else said, "Sometimes it feels like I can't relate to anyone, as most people don't have a stammer. But this has helped me relate to people and has made me a bit more comfortable with my stammer." And the last one, I think, pulls all of those together really nicely. "It helped me to build my confidence, to push myself beyond my limits, to do what I wouldn't normally do." So you can see just from that feedback how impactful these courses are for young people. And we have funded these courses for over 7 years in partnership with Ben and Teresa, and we look forward to being able to fund many more places for hundreds more teenagers in the years to come. Which brings me nicely back round to our partnership. Because over the next hour, you will learn more about how this partnership with the Atacama expedition team came about, the reasons why the expedition team selected Action for Stammering Children as their nominated charity, the expedition itself and what awaits the team as they venture across Chile and Bolivia, and how we intend for this partnership to help raise awareness about childhood stammering and reach our fundraising target. So let's start by introducing the expedition team who will be chatting with me this lunchtime. Can I ask each of you in turn to share a bit about yourselves and your role on the expedition?
Hi everyone. I'm very happy to be with you this lunchtime. My name is Alan Crofts. I'm the expedition team leader for the Into Clean Air expedition to the Atacama in Chile and the high arid areas of Chile and Bolivia. My background is I've been putting together expeditions across remote desert areas for about 25 years. So mostly in sandy desert, so desert with sand dune systems. So this is a little bit different for me because a lot of this will be in high mountain passes. By profession, I actually work in the pharmaceutical industry as a biochemist. But as I said, I'm the team leader, and I know the team are very happy to be here and supporting Action for Stammering Children. So I'll pass you on to Becca, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, it's nice to meet you all. I'm Becca. I'm a travel writer and an adventure travel enthusiast. I got into overlanding in 2016, and since then I've just fallen in love with the way of traveling. It really allows you to meet genuine people and have really unique experiences. And I wanted to be part of this team because it sounds like a really interesting opportunity to try something a little bit different. I'm really interested in getting into a bit more sustainable travel, and with the idea of using bio and synthetic fuels, could kind of pave the way for how expeditions are run in the future. And going to the Atacama is just such a beautiful place. I was fortunate to be there in April this year, so very excited to go back and kind of see it in a different way.
Who's next? Shall we go with Chris, please?
Hi everyone. Can you hear me? That's good. My name's Chris Beer. I'm the engineer on board the expedition, so my role is to look after the vehicles and make sure that they get to the end, and if they need repairs, to work out how to do that. My background was as a marine engineer originally on big oil tankers and then square rig sailing ships, sailing various parts of the world. And I did a lot of work doing expeditions through Asia, around Borneo, in East Greenland as well. Um, I've also been very lucky to do 18 years studying whales and dolphins out in the Azores and looking after the engines on the various boats that I used to do that on. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to do this. The reason that I wanted to do Chile and Bolivia is because I remember when I was a kid learning geography, I always remember them saying that the Atacama Desert was the driest place on the planet. So that's why I'd like to go and see what it's like. Thank you.
Right. Shall we go with Alex next?
Yeah. Hi everyone. So I'm Alex. I'm the filmmaker on the expedition. So my role is primarily capturing sort of photographic and video content of what we'll be doing. And yeah, my background is I work as a documentary film producer in broadcast, but I used to go on lots of big overland expeditions and film people doing bizarre adventures in the Atlas Mountains and in the Indian Himalayas and places like the Gobi Desert. So I'm very much an advocate of type 2 fun and like to kind of push my comfort zone. And with this expedition, I'm particularly interested in seeing how the terrain impacts us as a team in terms of the kind of challenges around that, but also just how to capture that content. So how to really make the most of that landscape and tell the story of what we're doing. So
Right.
Kat, would you like to
Kat next.
go next?
By default, I've worked out it's me. So my name's Kat Cordiner. I'm commercial liaison for the expedition, so that's primarily around funding. By day, I work in the financial services industry and have worked in around 6 or 7 different countries. But I'm an amateur adventurer in my spare time. Most of my previous adventures have been water-based, so rowing and sailing, or on land. So I like to hike up things. But last year I did a regularity car race in France. So I'm looking forward to another 4-wheel based expedition with Interclean Air next year. I think Atacama has long been on my list of places I would love to go and visit and explore. And I think in this past year, I've been doing a lot of work with sustainable initiatives at work. And so combining the two is kind of the perfect partnership for me. So really excited for our trip.
Thank you very much, everybody. And what a fantastic team. I'm actually very envious every time I listen to a little bit of their backgrounds that I have potentially not gone into the right industry. But thank you. So without further ado, you've now met the team. And we're now going to have a conversation about the partnership and the expedition and enlighten all of our supporters as to how this partnership came about, the importance of it and the value to children who stammer living across the UK. So Alan, can I start with you as the team leader? You're an ASC Stambassador. Can you tell our audience a little bit about how you first got involved in the charity?
Yes, we've actually been involved, I think, for a couple of years, probably a bit longer, when we sort of got together with you for the previous expedition. But the reason why I wanted to support Action for Stammering Children is that I had a very pronounced stammer when I was young. So this was mostly during sort of the years from about 11 to 18. And I know how it sort of affected me. This was in sort of the late 70s, early 80s. So there was no support at school. And I went to quite a school, so there was a lot of, I received a lot of sort of, I won't call it bullying. That's not the right word, but there was a lot of fun, I had fun taken out of me quite a lot. So, I understand very well how it affects young people. But also, I think it also was a positive thing in a sense, because I found that as I grew as a person, as I grew in, as I grew in sort of the idea of what I wanted to do with my life, then it began to leave me. And I know that this isn't the same for everyone. I know that it can have a number of different manifestations, one of which is probably more, to do with a more sort of distinct pathology. But for me, I found that when I became more confident and less prone to stress, that it kind of left me when I went to university, and subsequently when I joined the RAF, it didn't really affect me at all. Having said that, though, it still can affect me even now. There are words that I stumble on, and also there are, particularly when the words you have to use when there's no other option but to use that word. I sometimes stumble. I'm sure the team will recognize this. So for me, I've always wanted to support a charity that supports this, particularly in children and teens. So that's the reason why I wanted to support Action for Stammering Children, because of the sort of direct link I have with it, with stammering. So that's really why we became involved.
Thank you very much, Alan. And it's interesting actually that you've already kind of brought out quite a lot of the themes that young people tell us about when we're working with them, that kind of individuality around stammering, the fact that actually both the experience of stammering, but also the impact it has on children just differs so much between every child. And that's really important in a lot of the work that we do. And I imagine it must be quite interesting to you've done the Stambassador video, you've got young people who look up to you and all the things that you've achieved, despite perhaps some of those difficult childhood experiences initially, and it's wonderful that you can give that back to young people.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think I stand out in terms of how I've overcome it in a sense, because I know that the idea that you can overcome it isn't for everyone, but you can certainly, once you've got your confidence, you can manage it a bit better. I mean, I've been there, like I'm sure a lot of people listening to this, where you're kind of dreading for the phone to go off, or you're dreading, when you're in a company and you have to go around the table to introduce yourself, and you're waiting for this sort of, for the progression to get to you. I mean, I remember that, and I remember how awful it can be. But I think it can be positive as well, because it makes you become more confident. And I think you don't need to fear these sort of situations. You can overcome them. So I do relate to it, and and I've just been lucky enough to to have overcome it. But I didn't get that support, and I think that's one great thing about the ACS, is the fact that you do get that support through them.
Fantastic. No, well, I'm pleased to hear it, because I think that's what's, when we talked originally about you as the team leader coming to us and saying, in what ways could we potentially partner around this amazing expedition? And we talked to you about our stammering courses in North Yorkshire. And I think what just resonated quite quickly through that conversation was the fact that those courses are all about that building confidence, building resilience, preparing young people to kind of enter the world with a stammer, and that it doesn't need to hold them back, and giving them all of those practical tools, I suppose, and that community that they need to be able to kind of realise their goals. So yes, I mean we're delighted because this partnership just I think it so sits so nicely together in terms of your experience, the expedition team, but of course the course and what it aims to do. So thank you, Alan.
Okay.
So let's spend some time now. I'm sure that our audience will be desperate to know a bit more. We've heard Chile mentioned, we've heard Bolivia, we've heard Atacama, but I think maybe people would like to hear a little bit more about what you're actually doing in 2025. So could I ask my first question, can you tell us a bit about the inspiration behind the expedition itself and its purpose?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So, I mean, the inspiration for the initial expedition really came from Alan. So he brought the team together with the idea of doing a remote desert expedition, initially to cross the Nefer Desert in Saudi Arabia, but we've now shifted to a new location, which is the Atacama, so Chile and Bolivia. But the kind of core sort of aim behind that, the purpose really was to fulfill an expedition in a way that was a bit more ethical from an environmental standpoint. And so with that, we explored lots of different options, and we've landed on using biofuel or synthetic fuels and solar power as our kind of main fuel source. And really the purpose is to demonstrate that you can do quite extreme, remote and challenging vehicle-based expeditions in a sort of cleaner, carbon mitigating way. So we're not trying to be entirely carbon neutral, because we are essentially going to have to at least fly there, and depending on the level of funding we'll have different types of vehicles with different levels of biofuel. But our aim would be to be entirely using a sustainable fuel like biofuel. So in terms of the location, I mean, the Atacama is extremely challenging because of its altitude. It is a sort of, a desert in the mountains, essentially. So we'll have a really good sense of whether the vehicles can do this in that kind of challenging context. And there's also some lovely people that we've met that we're going to try and partner with. So one of the local partners we're hoping to work with is an educator called Rodolfo Rada, who has a brilliant, it's like I suppose it's a kind of a sustainable traveling camper van that he uses to teach about sustainability. It's all run on biodiesel. He collects biodiesel from restaurants in Santiago, and he uses that to power this van. He takes it around to local schools, and he's trying to essentially use that as a tool for outreach around the use of renewable energy and biofuel in particular. So in doing our expedition, we're hoping to highlight his work as well. Yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, a summary of the initial idea and sort of some of the things we're hoping to do out there, and why the Atacama in particular has been our focus.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. I love that. A desert in the mountains. I can picture it now. I think it's funny, we talk about Atacama Desert and we've mentioned it in this webinar already, and we talk about it in team meetings between us. And I was going to ask you if you could paint a picture, and I don't think there's a better one than a desert in the mountains. So I'm going to use that. Thank you. Yes. It's really interesting as well how you've managed to engage the community in your expedition. So there's always been through the time that we've worked with your team this focus on kind of being environmentally friendly and ethical and very considerate of the environment that you're working within. But I think what's really quite comes through, and I think probably another link back to the charity, is your persistence in wanting to have those community links and work with those in the country, not just kind of impose yourself. So that sounds brilliant. To follow up on that, you mentioned some of the challenges already about kind of altitude and will the vehicles be able to kind of manage the terrain. I suppose I just wondered if there were any other challenges that you had thought about or kind of anticipate on this journey.
Yeah, I think that one's for me. Yeah, there's a few things that we're quite not worried, but we have to be very careful with. One of the things is that the altitudes that we're going to go to are quite high, 4 or 5 thousand meters in some places. So that can cause altitude sickness, which will create potentially dizziness, nausea, vomiting, fatigue, poor decision making. All those things could happen. It's unknown whether people will get it or not. You can't anticipate it. And you can have people who are very unfit that don't suffer it at all, and you can have very fit people that get it. So it's just a case of going there and seeing how it goes, making sure we don't get dehydrated. And the cure for it basically is to come down from the altitude. And once you do that, then the symptoms start disappearing. So that's the first thing. Breakdowns are obviously a problem, so we have to make sure that we keep the vehicles checked all the time. So I'll be doing a check every single evening or every single morning before we leave, just to make sure that all the vehicles don't have any broken parts. I'll be maintaining them all the way through the trip. We have a very large tools and spares section that we'll take with us as well. And if we get into any problems with hitting rocks and things like that, we'll carry some heavy tools which will be able to actually straighten out the vehicles so we can carry on driving, hopefully. There are extremes of temperature change as well on this expedition, where we will be in some quite hot areas when we're in lowland areas, but then at night times and also when we go into altitude, we could end up getting in some really cold areas. That can affect us with fatigue and motivation of people, but it can also affect the equipment. For instance, batteries lose a lot of their charge when they get very cold. So we have to keep an eye on that and make sure we manage those things as they change. Accidents can also be a very big problem. People can get hurt, vehicles can get damaged. We do carry a very extensive medical kit, and our trip plan will always show locations of where we can get medical help in an emergency, but we have to allow for the fact that they may happen. We have 3 vehicles on purpose so that we still have the opportunity where it's unlikely all 3 would be involved in an accident. Which means that we've always got an escape plan if we need it, and that helps an awful lot. And then final thing I've thought about is also getting lost. Don't really want to get lost if we can possibly help it. It's a big old place. So we're currently working on our route plan at the moment in great detail. We have some very detailed maps, which I think are 1 to 400,000. And we use those in conjunction with Google Earth to plan the route with latitude and longitude markers at all the junctions and all the stop-off points, so we know where we're going to be every evening. And then we take GPS units as well, so we can actually manage our navigation using those. And then we have a sat phone as well, so if we do have a problem, we can call for help on that.
My goodness, Chris, when you put it like that, it sounds absolutely daunting. But also I think underscores the challenge that you're undertaking, and that kind of I suppose explaining really in terms of our partnership, the lengths that you're going, both for your own expedition aims, but also for the children and young people. Because I have to say, I think it's certainly a challenge that most people would think twice about after you've outlined all that, and a little bit of pressure on you as well.
Yeah, we'll live with that. That'll be fine. Yeah. I've got a spare one in my bag, so if one of the vehicles breaks down, I'll just pull that out, pour water on it, and it'll be fine, ready to go.
I'll be honest, Ria, even as Chris was reeling off that list, I was like, oh, it sounds a lot more challenging than I anticipated.
Please don't go, Kat. Please don't leave.
I think if I could just put my bit in as well, from my experience, you can have a great team, and this is a great, capable team. You can do all the planning that you like, but you just never know what's actually going to happen until you're there and doing it. And, some people might say, oh, Chile, it's well populated, what have you. But we're actually going into a very remote area and in an area that has got a lot of, we will face a lot of challenges. And that's the point, you obviously need to do as much planning as you can. We've got a great team, but at the end of the day, things happen when you're out there and you have to deal with them. So I think, you always have to keep that in mind.
Absolutely. I love an injection of positivity, Alan. And I think it's probably...
No, it's just realism more than...
Thank you. I guess that actually takes me nicely onto my next question, which you've touched on the challenges. You're going to be under strain. You're going to be potentially in a very remote place with just yourselves. Did you all know each other before the expedition? What's it been like getting to know each other if you didn't already?
Well, we didn't, no. The team came together for the idea of the previous expedition. So we didn't know each other at all. And also at the beginning of this year, we had two team members left. So Kat and Becca came in mid-year. So we've actually not been together that long. We have met up and we were going to meet a couple more times. But I think that's the great thing about this is that the team has come together for this expedition. And a lot of the team building will be done on expedition. So, how we get on with each other in person, that'll all come out. But I'm confident that it'll be fine. As I say, we are meeting for a couple of sort of team building events, including off-road driving training. But no, we didn't know each other, so I think it's going to be a great experience because of it.
I could just imagine. I mean, I have to say, off-road driving, that sounds so much fun. And I can see definitely team building. Can I kind of bring in kind of Becca and Kat? What's it been like coming in at this point into the team?
I don't know. Look, I was absolutely ecstatic when I got the email to say I was part of the team. Yeah, and I think it's been fabulous. Like the thing that I really enjoy about adventures like this, where I've typically sometimes done it with people I know, sometimes there's been a lot of element of people I don't, is that you get to meet a bunch of new people that are super passionate about adventures and doing some of this stuff. So the team have been very welcoming. I think the daunting bit for me is almost sort of getting up to speed on like what we're actually doing, because some of these things have been in train, as Alex mentioned, from the Nefford expedition, albeit now a different location.
Yeah, I completely agree with Kat. It's been really wonderful meeting everyone, and I really enjoy kind of being part of expeditions because you get to learn so much from each other. And although Kat and I have had to maybe catch up a little bit with getting on board, it's been really fantastic working with everyone so far and getting to meet and just hearing other people's stories and adventures and being inspired. And yeah, really looking forward to getting on the road.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I have to say, I just think it sounds so exciting, and meeting all of you individually. I mean, it's fascinating, all the things that you bring and the obviously different experiences, but it's just wonderful how it's kind of all come together. And you're obviously going off to a desert together. So I don't envisage any problems from meeting you all, but it's just very interesting. It's such a kind of quite an interesting thing, I suppose, as a children's charity that works on community, that how naturally it's all fallen into place seems really positive. I guess you've sort of said about the planning and the training, and I'm not sure, Alan, from what you were just saying, if actually much of this has happened yet. But I mean, just for a little bit of a glimpse, have you got any experiences or examples of things that have happened during the planning that you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, I mean, I think what's really incredible about this is that we do a lot of planning and sort of, almost kind of take it in our stride, if you see what I mean. So everybody's got their own assignments in a sense that we sort of get on with, because it does take a lot of organizing this kind of thing. And we are very, very keen that we do have a set of objectives that we really want to meet around the carbon saving element and using the alternative fuels and solar. And around that, there's a lot of organization, but we also have to go out and make connections in Chile and Bolivia. And it just takes a lot of time. So, as I say, at this point, and somebody please step in if you've got any examples. We what I find incredible is that, when we do get together as a team, is just to see how capable and, sort of team oriented everybody is. So a couple of weeks ago, myself, Becca, and Kat visited you in London. That was the first time I'd met Becca and Kat in person. And then as soon as we left you, we were in a taxi to go to the Chilean embassy to meet with the head of trade there. And that in itself is some, that's quite some day to do that. And then we had a meal together. So, I think it's kind of breaking down these barriers of what you can achieve. I think that's something that stood out for me. If anybody else has got any other specific examples, but I think for me, it's just the potential to meet with the team as and when, and then get as much out of it as we can.
Yeah, I've got just on that. So Becca and I met recently to go to the RGS, do an event called Explore. So it's like an expedition and field work kind of, get together, like a networking event. And Becca and I had never met, and we'd sort of planned to do a pitch to the whole kind of conference about our expedition, just to kind of introduce it and what we're doing. And yeah, having never met, we sort of got together, very roughly kind of planned what we were going to say, and then we stood up in front of 100 people and sort of said, this is what we're doing next year. And just to kind of meet people who had advice, I guess, to give us on that part of the world. So I think, yeah, there's been lots of instances like that where we've sort of just come together and really sort of hit the ground running. And I think that probably is just a sign of how the expedition will go. And yeah, when we finally all get together as 6 of us, it will be, yeah, I'm sure, a really interesting collaboration of ideas, and yeah, I think we'll do good things.
I think as well, that's for me the biggest thing, which is it's the meeting people. So not just obviously within our own team, but as Alan said, you're in the Chilean embassy, we're meeting you, Ria. And I think the thing that I guess I always sort of leave after sort of some of those meetings feeling is that whilst of course there's a method to and a reason why we're meeting people, a lot of it's organizational, charity, etc. But I think it's the fact that you sort of leave remembering that obviously we're doing an expedition, but it's not really just about the expedition and us being there. It's the fact that there are a lot of people around this, there's purpose in what we're doing. And so the number of people that you're ultimately reaching and speaking to is quite large. Even just at work, I get asked on a regular basis, like, so what's happening with this expedition? I think they all think it's in January or something as well. And I keep saying it's a bit longer, it takes some work, but people are really excited about it. And so having the opportunity to talk about it. And for me, it's also learning, because I don't really understand a lot of the stuff around the biofuel, etc. So there's a bit of learning for me, which I found quite enjoyable as well.
Fantastic, thank you. It's really interesting. I mean, that kind of community building, as you say, and that learning and being exposed to completely new organizations and experiences, it's fantastic. I mean, it's brought us together, so that's been fantastic. Okay, I want to kind of move on a little bit now, back into kind of stammering, and just thinking about, we know Alan's connection to stammering, as he explained at the beginning of the webinar. But what about the rest of the team? And I suppose I just wanted to start by asking, before this partnership, how much did you know about stammering? Was it on your radar? Was it something, had you experienced stammering in your own lives or in your own workplaces? Just interested.
I mean, I don't mind just jumping in quickly. I guess I wasn't aware of the charity, RIA, at all. So my ignorance there, apologies all. But I have had people in my team at work over the years and more recently that have either suffered with or still, are coping with a stammer. So I've I've experienced it from that lens, not from a personal lens.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd also not heard of the organization or really met anyone with a stammer. So I think I was when we did the event in October last year, it was I think just a real education and hearing from the young people about their experiences. And two things I took away from that is just purely from a place of really not understanding yeah, how to interact with someone with a stammer. But I remember one of the people saying, you know, if we're struggling to find the word, don't jump in and give us the word. Let us find the word and give us, basically be patient. And I thought that was a really important and you know, obvious comment, but also just something that it's so natural in conversation that you feed in and try and help. So I really took that away. And also that it's not necessarily that the person's uncomfortable or anxious, that their stammer is just something that's happening. So I think that's again a really I didn't know that, and I think there is an assumption that it's coming from a place of, oh, they're uncomfortable or yeah, nervous perhaps. So I found it extremely educational, and yeah, it was really for me just a fascinating kind of introduction into what it's like to have a stammer.
Thanks, Alex. And Kat also. It's interesting. So Alex is referring to the event that we held in October last year, where we heard from 4 young people who'd taken part in the Talking Out Horses. And I'm really glad that you shared those reflections, Alex, because it's really interesting as a charity they're probably 2 of the key messages, that we work the hardest and repeat the most. And in a fast-paced world in which people are very keen to communicate what they want to say and perhaps have less emphasis on active listening, there's loads of stuff that we can just do just in being kind of supportive communication partners. So this expedition, I think, is so pivotal, not just in terms of the kind of the tangible funding that we made available for the program, but it's actually the awareness raising, because already we're engaging a team who potentially didn't have a huge amount of background in stammering. And hopefully you will be going out there and talking about it even more. And perhaps when you do encounter people who stammer, you're obviously coming with more confidence in knowing a little bit more about it. So that's brilliant. Thank you. I wondered if, and maybe Becca or Chris, but all of you, whether how working with ASC has informed or changed your perspective of stammering. Alex has given us some really nice positive examples of things that she's learned about stammering, but I wondered if there was anything from working with us over, for people like Alex, quite a long time, perhaps for people like Kat and Becca, a little bit of a less time, that's changed or informed your perspective around stammering.
I was at the event that we had last year that we came to, and I thought it was amazing. It was so good to be able to meet somebody that we're actually helping with, hopefully. I again didn't know anything about stammering really. I've never had anyone in my life with a stammer, so it was very interesting and educational to actually understand the sort of things that they were saying, which was brilliant. So in reality, because I didn't know it, I'm really excited to actually be part of an event that is helping. I mean, obviously, there's 3 of us straight away that didn't know about you that now do. So clearly it's working. But yeah, the more people that we can get to find out about it and understand what the issues are and actually learn how to help people who suffer from stammering is brilliant. So I love it.
Thanks very much, Chris, for that.
Yeah, I also I think I'm also on the same page. I never particularly, I mean, I didn't know about you guys, and I never really thought of stammering as I guess as being a thing until kind of working with you more. And I've really kind of it's made me realize actually what people can do to help with it, and that there are charities such as yourself out there to help people build confidence and kind of overcome their stammer. And I'm really excited to be kind of working with you guys to help share this, because it's something I haven't particularly come across before, and I feel like it should be spoken about more. It's I think what you guys are doing with the residential programs is a great way to build confidence and to help younger people where they might be struggling a bit, and to kind of, yeah, to get them outside and mingling with other people and knowing that they're not alone, that there are other people that have stammers and there are people that are willing to put their time and dedication to help them overcome them.
Thank you, Becca. I know we've spoken quite a lot, haven't we, about kind of messaging and the courses themselves. So it is wonderful to hear that kind of that's resonating insofar as what those courses are trying to achieve. And I guess that leads me quite nicely on to my next question, which is about a challenge, I suppose, for us as a partnership. And I think that we've kind of sort of preempted this question a little bit in the conversation, but one of the challenges about a partnership like this is that crossover, that sweet spot between those interested in the expedition itself for a variety of reasons. They might be explorers, adventurers, environmentalists, and then those who have a connection to stammering. And I suppose something that is always difficult with partnerships is you're kind of pulling from different interests, different parts of the population. And I just wondered if you'd given any thought or had any messages that you'd like to send to potential supporters and sponsors of the expedition, particularly about the charity, but you know, phenomenally really why this partnership can be beneficial to both groups.
Well, I think to me the whole concept is pretty straightforward. I mean, we're kind of in partnership because we as a team want to support you. And so, you know, I think it's quite common that people use some kind of project that they're engaged with to support a charity that they feel, quite strongly about. The direct bridge, if you like, is myself because I suffered and do suffer to a certain extent. I know suffer's not the right word, but I do experience the condition stammering right now. And we're simply using our expedition to highlight both ourselves and the charity as well. So I don't think that's a difficult concept for people to get their head around. I think it's quite straightforward. For us at an expedition, we're also, as you say, engaging with the sort of green element, the carbon mitigation element. But again, that's a feature that just happens to be a feature of the expedition, which I think just is something that highlights and kind of raises the expedition above just six of us going on an adventure. So I think there's a very, there's quite a definite link there between what we're doing and the efforts of the charity. So I see that as a link.
Thanks, Alan. No, and I would agree with you. I think it's it's a fantastic partnership and it makes a lot of sense. But it is interesting how you kind of engage different people in this. And I think also it kind of speaks to the fact that stammering, 8% of children stammer, 1% of adults stammer. And actually by engaging people through something like an expedition, you actually can find that stammering is sort of in someone's sphere already. They just might not have realised yet.
I think, Ria, just on that as well, for me, the biggest thing is, and we've used this word a number of times, is the outreach. If you think about all the people that we're connecting with as part of the expedition, when we go to the Chilean embassy, right, we're talking about ASC and the charity that we're partnering with. So if you look around this table and you say three of us didn't know anything about ASC, just by de facto talking to the sheer volume of people that we're talking to and getting stuff out there and how we hope to, I guess, get this into media as well. Just from an outreach perspective, hopefully we're going to reach, many, many, many more people.
Just another kind of crossover that has occurred to me throughout working with you is that doing adventures and going on big expeditions, they are really good for your mental health. They're really good for building resilience. They're really good for confidence, for self-autonomy. And I think so I worked for I led a group of young people in the Hebrides this summer, and the whole purpose of that was, I suppose, building resilience through adventure. And I think with any of these expeditions, what we also want to do is inspire, I suppose, people to go and basically, yeah, use adventure as a tool for mental health, and hopefully, and I think that does link into the residentials that you do, but on a much bigger scale. So yeah, I hope that that's also a kind of a clear link between our two sides of this partnership as well.
100%, Alex. I think, yeah, it's something we talk about a lot with kind of our trustees and our Stambassadors and our youth panel is, and I think that link for those who've kind of been on the residential, they have said that, you know, the expedition's almost like a bigger scale, because the residentials do integrate that kind of the speech and language therapy with those cognitive psychological concepts, and then they are kind of, so things like stretching out zones and things like that, and then using outdoor activity to implement that. Then as you said, all of that stuff around kind of mental health and well-being is wrapped up into it. On Kat's point as well, it's interesting, Kat, you said that, because when we did the event in October last year, the number of our supporters that came to us fascinated by the expedition itself. And we thought they'd just have questions about the stammering and the beneficiaries that they got to listen to. And we just got all this at the end. I just was asked constantly. And I said, I'm afraid I'm not a specialist in that area. If you want to ask me about stammering, then, and it was just fantastic that once you had those people in the room, even if they might have come to that event or come to that webinar like today or that partnership from one side, once they were there, the integration was there. So yes, absolutely. So equally, we've been talking quite a lot about your expedition with our stakeholders too, and it's been lovely to see that engagement.
Yeah.
Now, before we, because I realise that we're nearly at time, but while we've been talking, we have had a few questions from our audience that I thought we could just take in the last sort of 5 to 7 minutes. And I think Sophia has been collecting them. So if Sophia, you wanted to share those questions, that would be great. She might be putting them in the chat for me.
Can I just say, while we're waiting for those questions to go, I remember I didn't have a lot of confidence when I was a kid, and I was quite lucky to come across an expedition, which I went on, and it changed my life. And I know we're not necessarily going to change lives specifically, but the fact is that maybe young people who have stammering issues can see what we do and think, well, actually, I quite fancy doing that myself. And they might actually join an expedition in the future, having had a contact with us. And for them to then go and do an expedition and achieve something really good, even if it's not quite as intense as ours, I think would be a really big milestone in their life. So, yeah, fingers crossed that happens.
Absolutely, Chris. No, I think it would be fantastic. And I do certainly know that we have youth panel members of our youth panel who have done things like the Duke of Edinburgh, who have talked about kind of moving forward beyond that because of that confidence, like you said, that you get. So it wasn't even related to stammering. They just wanted to do an expedition and get out into the outdoors.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we have our first question from the audience. The first question is about what makes the Action for Stammering Children Residential so impactful. So I think that's probably something that I can cover off briefly. So one of the things that I think makes the residentials so impactful is that they firstly are often the first opportunity that a teenager has to be in a group of people who stammer. So many young people report they've never met someone who stammers. Some might have met one person, or they might have a parent or family member, but to actually belong to a group in which what you have in common is the thing that actually might cause you the most anxiety the rest of the time, I think is quite empowering. And as you heard from some of those testimonials earlier, young people get quite a lot from that. And I think the other is that kind of idea of acceptance, that I stammer, but I can communicate effectively. And actually, you just need to accept me because I've accepted myself. So that's a big thing that we see out of the residentials. But if you want more information, please have a look at our website or give us get in touch, because we can give you loads more than that. I'm just conscious of time. So I think the next question, so this is quite an interesting one. Looking ahead, so after 2025, what do you anticipate your key learnings or the best part of the expedition being?
I mean, as far as from my point of view, I think if I could just say what I'm looking forward to the most, is just being out in the middle of nowhere and trying to navigate the terrain. And I think we'll encounter things that we just won't expect, things will happen. And it's a question of how you get past those things that will happen to you. So for me, it's always about overcoming the unknown. I think, we do that, we make maps of where we've been. For me, that will be the most important part of it. And so the key learning will be from that will be how did you overcome those unknowns? Because it always happens, things always happen, and it's how you overcome it. So if anybody else wants to take it from there.
I think that resonates really nicely, Alan, that idea of overcoming. And then we're not necessarily talking about overcoming stammering, we're talking about overcoming the impact. And I think that's interesting because it's a key learning, I think, for the course as well. I can see that I have a hand raised, unless anyone wanted to follow up on Alan. Okay. Joe.
Hi, thanks for that. That's been really interesting hearing that. And I just wanted to say, I think, from the team, it's really great. We feel really excited and grateful to be partnering with you on this. So thanks very much. But I just wanted to ask Alex, I think, because one of your primary roles is going to be documenting the adventure that you're going on. And I was just wondering, it's probably too early to say in any detail, but whether you could give us any indication of what sort of outputs they're going to be, because I think we in the charity, and I think a lot of the charity supporters would like the opportunity to, to share in the adventure in some way. And I hope that what you're going to be doing is going to give us some opportunity to do that.
Yeah. So our plan really is to produce a short documentary of the expedition. We haven't we've gone back and forth, to be honest, about how long that will be and to what I guess kind of depth and detail, because it's sort of like how long's a piece of string. You can be extremely thorough in the way you document something like this, to the point of filming several weeks before, all the preparation and the aftermath. So I would say the kind of the rough outline probably is to do something not too elaborate, and that's something I need to kind of make sure that I keep in track, really. But produce a short documentary that we can basically say, here is a sort of, I suppose, like a summary of the highlights of the expedition, and the most challenging sections, and yeah, and not just a documentary, but also some kind of a press material. So we'll have photography, and we'll have writing that we'll all do around it as well. But I think with, and it's not just myself, Rebecca is also a photographer. So I think we'll end up probably having far more content that we possibly know what to do with, is what usually happens. And then, over the kind of weeks and months that follow that, we'll put something together. So yeah, we'll hopefully have quite a few nice deliverables for you as well, that we can share between us as to promote what we've done.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alex. I'm really looking forward to seeing the video, I must admit. I mean, it's always wonderful to have too much, isn't it? It's something that we always aim for. Fantastic. So I have another question here, which is quite interesting. What advice would you give to someone who is inspired by your story, and wants to take on their own challenge for a cause that they care about?
Anybody?
I would say just go for it. Absolutely, just go for it. Think about your planning. Work out what you want to achieve with your own idea. Maybe do it with some people so you can share the experience, because the more people, the better it's probably going to be. Plan it really, really well. Think about what you need to do in order to make the thing happen, and try and imagine it all the way through from the start to the finish. And think about any problems that you think you might encounter on the way, and come up with solutions before you even start. And then make sure you've got the right stuff to be able to deal with the solutions, whether it's training or equipment or extra people or whatever. And once you've done all that, then give it a go.
Thanks, Chris. Alex?
Yeah, I was just going to sort of add to that. It depends on where you're at and your level of experience. But I'd say if this is something that you aspire to do, but you're just starting off, start small. Do something that's more achievable and kind of build up. So maybe that's just doing a sort of solo wild camp somewhere in like North Wales, something small, but then you can build on that. And I think it's also about meeting people that you think, oh, yeah, I would really rely on this person in a sort of more challenging remote environment. And I'd also say, just from having been at the RGS Explore event, go to those types of events, because you get so much inspiration. You meet lots of different people who've done all these different things, and there's actually a lot of resource out there to help you get started. So it's always incredibly daunting, but there's usually ways in, and it's about, I'd say it's about meeting people. But also Explorers Connect, that's how we all met. So sometimes other people have got an idea and they've got a plan for an expedition, and they just need people to get involved. So it's kind of already there, and you just sort of jump in. So that's also another really a kind of easy route into doing this kind of thing.
Thanks very much, Alex. Great advice there, actually. Thank you. Super. The last question, just in terms of time, is actually quite related to my closing remarks, so that probably works quite well, which is about beyond the expedition. What are you kind of planning as part of this partnership? And I suppose there are just a couple of things I wanted to highlight. So the first is that in terms of the expedition itself, you now know all about it, which is fantastic. So our call to action to you is to help us spread the word when we officially announce it in the new year. We will be organising a dedicated fundraising event before the expedition team jet off. So a wine tasting event that you heard it here first. You're not going to get any more from us on it, but we will just pique your interest. So if you like Chilean wine, I know I certainly do, then keep your eyes peeled on your inboxes for more information about that in the new year. There are also ways to support directly the expeditions. They're becoming a friend of Atacama. So that's if you would like to set up a regular direct debit to the appeal, then you're very welcome to do so, and we would encourage it. And we'd also encourage those watching this webinar to share this webinar with friends, colleagues, neighbours, anybody who you think might be interested in hearing a little bit more about the inspiring partnership that has been created between our two organisations. In terms of kind of the ending of the session, because everybody will have had their lunch and may well need to go back to work, I just wanted to start by really thanking Alex, Kat, Chris, Becca and Alan for a fantastic conversation. I really could go on all afternoon. I'm so interested in the expedition, and as my team know, stammering is something I can talk about all day. But thank you very much for taking the time to talk about your role and your motivation for wanting to partner with us. And I really wanted to say, as Joe has mentioned, we are incredibly grateful as a charity to be in a position to partner with you and that you've nominated us. We are the UK charity for children and young people who stammer, but we are still small. And so this sort of opportunity is a fantastic one for the families and the young people that we support and continue to support. And we really hope that we'll be meeting again in a year's time to say that we have exceeded, not just met, exceeded our fundraising goal, and we'll be able to send even more children to our stammering courses in North Yorkshire. So we really hope that everybody who's been listening to the webinar has enjoyed it, that you feel firstly enlightened as to the partnership and what it entails, that you feel motivated and spurred on to start planning your expedition, particularly if it's in support of Action for Stammering Children, but wherever it is in the world, and that you're also looking forward to the weekend ahead. As I said, we will be officially announcing this partnership in January, so keep an eye out for all the comms around that then, and we'll be in touch with ways that you can get involved and support us as a partnership moving forward. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ria.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, everybody.
I guess that's a wrap.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Back to the day
Okay.
job.
Yeah, back to